YouTube, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I put anything out. Anyway, so I've got a 54-inch Douglas fir round that from a tree we took down in Deer Park, Washington in 2015, and I'm going to share some pictures of the actual tree. Once we cut it down, hauled it. It sat for, I don't know, sat until this last fall before we milled up the biggest of the logs. And I ended up cutting a couple of cookies off the end because it was too wide for the 48-inch bandsaw mill that we had for slabbing the main, as big as we could get with the mill. Anyway, so I cut a couple cookies, and so our project today is to go ahead and flatten them. I've been drying this thing out. I mean, it was drying as it sat for 5-6 years, about right, 4 or 5 years, the end of it, and then I cut the cookies, and it still had moisture in it, so I let it dry out for a couple months inside my shop, where I usually have a fire going. And anyhow, got to the point where I thought it was pretty close to dry, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing router sledded. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a moisture reading. I just have a small, one of our lower end moisture meters, but it seems to work fine. So I just took, and you can see on this pass here, I've taken, I'm going pretty deep with these passes. Let me come over here and grab my tape measure. But anyway, so in my experience router sledding, to do end grain like these cookies, it's much more efficient to use a narrower, taller bit versus the wide, shallower bits. Normally I use a Whiteside 6220, which is a 4-blade carbide tipped bit. It's, I think, 2 inch, maybe 2.5. And then I also use a really wide, actually I have one right here. This one here is a, what do they call this thing? Magnate, that's right, a magnate. It's 3-inch. And this is what I use for doing all this type of stuff. Flat, not end grain, but just with the grain. And I've done pretty much everything in here with it. With the magnate, it's just really quick. It's nice taking a 3-inch pass. Anyhow, with the taller, narrower bit, which what I'm using right now is a Freud, we get these huge chips because we're able to take, close to, I mean, I can take 1 inch per pass. The passes have to be narrow. You can kind of see the lines. You can, here's a good example right here. So you can do about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch is about perfect. Just to show you the bit that I'm using to get these, is this Freud. It's, I think it's only 1 inch wide, but it's 1.5 inches tall. So on the plunge router, we're able to, take 1 inch in a pass. And it seems to go much quicker than using this guy. I tried this guy on end grain, and it's just, it bogs the router if you try and take a full pass. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. Now let's check this moisture here. And it looks like we've got 4%. It's upside down. So, I don't know. I don't think it'll cup anymore. It did cup pretty good, as you can see. This was a straight cut when I bucked it off with the chainsaw, as you can see in this picture. And so you can tell that the whole thing cupped pretty good in the course of time, in the time that I let it dry in my shop. Got one huge check here. I don't really like that. I should have put a ratchet strap around it, because I knew that was going to happen. I just figured it was dry enough, being on the end of the log, that it wouldn't check that hard, but it did once we got it inside. Not a big deal. We'll stabilize it, and with resin, epoxy, stabilize all these cracks, and this should turn out real nice. I mean, it's pretty decent diameter for a Douglas fir cookie. 48 inch on this is the narrow end. If I flip it over, it's wider. It was a pretty good bell butt, is what we call it. Just a lot of taper right out of the ground. So it's wider on the other side. I think 54 inch is what we measured. So anyhow, get back to it here. Okay, so I wanted to go over a couple things before I got back to it. Share with you a little bit more about my setup. So I'm gonna switch over here real quick. So this bit here is the 6220. I love this bit because it's 4-bladed. It's and when they're sharp, I don't know, they're just like a Porsche, really. This one here is, I'm gonna measure it, 2 inch. So the 2 inch works great for flattening slabs. Not end grain. I mean, they work fine for end grain too, but the taller, narrower Freud works really great for end grain as far as production. Kind of the way I work is, whatever I'm doing, like most people, generally will try a number of different methods or ways, find out which way is quickest, and anyhow, so hopefully that helps people. You know, you can just buy the cheap Chinese bits on Amazon or eBay, and they'll work, you know, but it never hurts to spend a little more money and get these better bits. This one was $55. I've spent about a couple $100 on these. You can see this one here is trashed. If you look at the corner there, it's this corner here too is shot. So once that happens, as it's cutting, you can see it'll leave a gap, and it ends up tearing, especially when you're surfacing slabs. It just tears. You'll end up with a lot of tearing. You guys probably know what that is, but it's basically where it rips out. It actually rips out deeper than your actual cut. So then you end up having to either sand a lot or take another pass across the whole slab, which is sometimes not what you want, because I'm usually shooting for a particular depth, and if I'm on my last pass at that depth, and I've achieved that depth, and I end up with a bunch of tear out or a bunch of tearing of the grain of the wood fibers, then I'm like, okay, I guess I get a sand or do another pass. And the best way to avoid tear out, in my experience, is just to go super slow. My router, it's a Porter cable. What's the model on this guy? This router's actually discontinued, but it's the I can't even see it. I think it's the 39. It is the 7539 variable speed, and I'm actually looking for these on eBay used, because They're awesome. This is my first one. I bought it about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've literally flattened hundreds and hundreds of slabs with it. Great router. I actually fashioned this handle, as you can see in the video. It makes it look really nice. I don't have to be bent over the slab as I do something really wide like this. Makes it really nice. I can just stand on the edge of the table and make my passes. A little bit about my setup. You know, I see these router sleds, like Stone Coat fashioned one, and there's another one that aluminum one that someone fashioned, and you know, they look really great. I've never used one, but they look like they'd really work well as far as maybe you doing some smaller slabs. But what I've found is, and I actually got this idea, this exact idea was, I don't know, probably back in 2015 on Instagram. I was following, who was it? I think it was, shoot, I can't remember who it was. Gobi Walnut or, anyhow, yeah, I think it was Gobi Walnut before they actually had planers, big wide planers and huge equipment. Maybe it wasn't Gobi Walnut, I can't remember. I think it was somebody who now has all that equipment. But anyway, they were on their shop floor. They were taking pictures of router sledding slabs like this, and basically all they had was 2-inch. This is 1/4 inch, 2-inch square channel, 1/4 inch thick wall, and then my tray. All it is angle iron, 1/4 inch angle iron, and my router, which I literally paid, I think, $500 for this router. You know, these are 68 bucks on eBay. These are 55 bucks on Amazon. The Freuds are about 35, 40 bucks. The angle iron, or I'm sorry, the square channel or the square tubing, the angle iron, the router. I got this table at Habitat for Humanity for 15 bucks. And what I did with the table, because the shop floor isn't perfectly level, so what I did is I flipped the table upside down, and I screwed some pilot holes right up the center of these legs, and then screwed some leg bolts in similar to these, not quite as long, but you know, put these right up in the legs, and that way I can adjust the height on each corner. And so I can adjust the table so it's perfectly level, and then once that's perfectly level, then everything else is going to fall into place as far as level. This is just 3/4 inch thick MDF that I have excess of from building epoxy pour molds, or yeah, to put the resin pour the river tables in before I pour on those. This is just leftover. So, but it's nice because it's perfect dimension as far as thickness. So I just stack these up as high as I need to go, keeping in mind I got a 2-inch rail. So I'll basically get it so this surface right here is just a little bit taller than my highest point on my slab, and then I can go ahead and use my plunge to go down. You know, I can go down maybe an inch from the time I start, as long as I have this tray pretty darn close to here. I can go down about an inch or maybe more. Yeah, that's about it, about an inch. So anyhow, and then if I need to, like on my next pass, what I'll do is once I come all the way across here, obviously my bit's as low as it'll go on the router. So then what I'll do is I'll just pull the rails off and take one of these 3/4 inch pieces of MDF off all 4 corners, and basically it lowers the whole setup 3/4 of an inch, and then I can go ahead and bring my plunge router back up about an inch, and then start fresh and take her down another inch if I need to. And so that's basically my setup. I've got not even $1,000 into the whole setup. Okay, getting back to it here, we're gonna get this slab finished up, possibly do some sanding, and call it a day. Okay, looks like we've got a finished thickness of 5 1/4. Alright, so I was just going to mention that what I love about my router sled setup is the fact that it's so heavy. You know, the 2-inch square channel for the rails, that stuff's real beefy, it's solid, nothing's moving. I've got it sitting on the MDF, and then I've got screws on each side of the rail to hold it, to keep it from moving. Just just drywall screws going into the MDF, and then the 1/4 inch angle iron. That's what makes up the rails that the router slides back and forth in. That stuff is the 1/4 inch. I believe I have about 72 inches in length, and so it's like 6 feet. It's heavy. It's not fun to move back and forth. I actually also have a tray that I built out of 1/8 inch, which is really nice on slabs that are, you know, 3 feet wide at the max. I tried doing a 5 foot wide slab with the 1/4 inch, and there's a little bit of, you know, once you push the router into the center of it, because it was only 1/4 inch, I could see it in the surface of my slab once I was finished, that it was actually, the weight of the router was, you know, with the 1/4 inch angle iron tray being 6 feet, 7 feet long, it was just bowed just a hair. I mean, nothing's. I mean, you could have sanded it out, but I didn't really like the fact that it was doing that, so I went ahead and bought 1/8 inch angle iron for the wider slabs, like this cookie slab, this Doug fir cookie slab. It's just a reassuring feeling, knowing you can go really wide like that. You could do 5, 6, 7, 8 feet wide if you had to. I mean, not a lot of folks doing 8 foot wide slabs, but we're going to be doing some huge poplar cookie slabs. We've got a couple 9 footers to slab up, and we've got a 10 footer, and then we've got a 12 foot wide. I mean, the cookies are 12 feet in diameter, and so I got to figure out how I'm going to get those cut to begin with. But anyhow, they'll probably be a year or two down the road before they're cut and dried and ready for a router sled. But that's the only way we're going to actually be able to process those to get them flat. It's with the router sled right here on the shop floor. So it should be interesting. Anyhow, I just wanted to mention that my router sled, it's set up pretty much for bigger stuff. And anyhow, if you guys have any questions on it, or any input, just go ahead and comment. And with that, thanks for joining me. You'll see that chunk of wood get made into a table here at some point. All right, thanks.